Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, we venture beyond the stained glass and incense of the Holy See to ask a question as startling as it is profound. Could the one whom Christians revere as Savior have come from the stars? We'll trace the whispers hidden in ancient tomes, the curious symbols in vaulted ceilings, and the bold ideas of modern theologians wrestling with the cosmos. This journey is as much about faith as it is about wonder where light meets shadow and miracles brush shoulders with mystery. If you're drawn by the promise of discovery, feel free to like and subscribe only if your heart guides you there. And please, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing our little constellation of curious minds. Now, dim the lights. Let a soft hum of white noise surround you, and prepare to drift into a story where heaven's gates might open more widely than we ever imagined. When we step into the hushed corridors of the Vatican Apostolic Archive, established by Pope Sixtus V in 1587, an unexpected question sometimes whispers through the dust of centuries. Could the figure at the heart of Christian faith have origins beyond earth itself? From the earliest surviving Christian text copies of the Gospel of John, dating to the late 2nd century, to the carved stone reliefs in Roman catacombs, believers have long interpreted signs of divine visitation in cosmic terms. It was at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE that church leaders first codified Christ's nature as true God from true God, a formula intended to affirm his divinity and fully human experience. Yet some modern scholars read those same words as suggesting a being whose origin defies terrestrial limits. In the late 1800s, when the Vatican's secret archives were formally renamed and catalogued by Pope Leo XIII, few could have predicted that one day researchers would pore over those vellum manuscripts in search of alien allusions. Throughout the Renaissance, artists like Michelangelo and Raphael painted Christ's halo as a luminous orb, yet none imagined we might see it as a spacecraft's beacon, jumping forward to the 20th century. References to unidentified aerial phenomena in Vatican I-sponsored journals, most notably during papal support for the International Astronomical Union's activities in the 950 shave only fueled speculation that the Church quietly observes the skies. Despite the gravity of these archival treasures, the official stance remains reserved. Life beyond Earth has never been ruled out, but Jesus himself is celebrated as fully human and fully divine. The question endures not because historians have uncovered conclusive evidence, but because the intersection of faith and cosmic possibility continues to captivate our imagination. When scholars first gained access to the Vatican's secret archives in 1881 under the direction of Pope Leo XIII, they entered a labyrinth of documents that stretch back to the 8th century. When early papal registers were kept in the Lateran Palace, in February of 2019, Pope Francis formally renamed these storied holdings the Vatican Apostolic Archives, signaling a new era of transparency while preserving centuries of ecclesiastical record-keeping. Within those echoing halls and climate-controlled vaults are diplomatic letters from 15th century envoys who describe strange lights dancing above St. Peter's Basilica, and reports from Jesuit astronomers at the Collegio Romano in the Levendot. The 17th century, who logged celestial phenomena they could not explain in terms of comets or planetary motion. Marginalia penned by monastic scribes in the 14th century refer to visions of winged beings descending from the firmament to deliver sacred instruction, passages now debated as either allegorical mysticism or early attempts to record encounters with unearthly craft. In the 19th century, a dossier assembled under Monsignor Filippo Balan, secretary of the Pontifical Academy of Theology, preserved transcripts of philosophical debates about meteor showers and their possible connection to divine revelation. More than one 20th century file, declassified in recent decades, reveals that the Pontifical Academy of Sciences invited the astronomer J. Allen Hynek to consult on unidentified aerial phenomena during the 1960s, reflecting a willingness to entertain hypotheses about non-terrestrial life within a scientific as well as theological framework. Yet, despite these tantalizing clues, Vatican custodians emphasize that no manuscript or papal bull explicitly equates Jesus of Nazareth with an extraterrestrial visitor. The whispers in these archives instead underscore an enduring curiosity, recognition that the heavens have always been a canvas for both faith and wonder, and that the line between the sacred and the cosmic may be finer than we ever imagined. Long before modern ufologists coined the term ancient astronauts, early Christian thinkers wrestled with doctrines that some now reinterpret as cosmic in scope. In the 2nd century, Church Father Justin Martyr wrote of the Logos as a preexistent force active before creation, a concept that resonates strikingly with contemporary ideas of a sentient cosmic emissary. Clement of Alexandria, writing around 200 CE, described Christ as the divine artisan who shaped the universe, language that today might be read as suggesting extraterrestrial agency. These same thinkers affirmed Jesus' full humanity, yet their emphasis on preexistence and cosmic function shows that early theology did not confine the Savior to earthly boundaries. Around 380 CE, the Cappadocian Fathers elaborated on the Spirit's descent like a dove at the baptism of Christ, a metaphor grounded in Jewish symbolism, but re-examined by some as imagery of aeronautical arrival. Even in the 3rd century Apocalypse of Paul, an apocryphal work excluded from the canon, the apostle ascends through multiple heavens, encountering beings described in mechanical terms of vision that modern readers sometimes liken to spacecraft decks and alien crews. Throughout the Middle Ages, theologians such as Thomas Aquinas and Albert the Great debated the possibility of multiple worlds inhabited by rational creatures, ruling that God's creative power was not limited to earth alone. These philosophical foundations enshrined in the Summa Theologica and commentaries on Aristotle granted the Church intellectual license to consider extraterrestrial life seriously long before telescopes or space probes. It was this rich legacy of cosmic Christology that laid the groundwork for 20th century dialogues between theologians and scientists, forging a bridge between medieval metaphysics and the question, if God could create life elsewhere, might the same divine plan have brought his Son from beyond our planet? In these layers of early Christian thought, we find not proof, but a poignant reminder that faith has always dared to look skyward in search of answers. Hidden for centuries in earthen jars and rediscovered only in the mid-20th century, the Gnostic Gospels invite us into a more enigmatic vision of Christone that some interpret as hinting at an unearthly origin. The Gospel of Thomas, unearthed at Nag Hammadi in 1945, preserves secret sayings attributed to Jesus, each prefaced by, "and he said," creating a tapestry of cryptic instructions suggesting knowledge beyond earthly wisdom. In one passage, the teacher speaks of returning to the place from which you have come, language that modern readers sometimes construe as pointing to an extraterrestrial homeland rather than merely a heavenly realm. The Gospel of Philip, with its intricate symbolism of bridal chambers and divine unions, hints at the joining of different realms in alchemy that, in contemporary parlance, evokes interdimensional contact. Meanwhile, the Gospel of Judas portrays the betrayer not as a villain but as a facilitator of Christ's transcendence. An act, some fringe scholars liken to an alien operative, ensuring an otherworldly mission proceeds according to plan. These texts were deemed heretical by early church councils and excluded from the canon precisely because they deviated from the orthodox narrative of Jesus' earthly ministry. Yet their very suppression underscores the potency of their visions and the fear they inspired in ecclesiastical authorities. While mainstream theology regards these writings as symbolic or mystical, rather than factual records, their vivid imagery and provocative metaphors continue to fuel speculation. Do they secretly chronicle encounters with beings from beyond our solar system, or do they merely expand the spiritual dimensions of Christ's teaching? In the swirl of these Gnostic voices, we glimpse a Christology that refuses to be confined on, that compels us to reconsider the boundaries between myth, metaphor, and the marvelous possibility of life beyond Earth. In the soaring vaults of Renaissance cathedrals, artists like Giotto and Fra Angelico sought to render the divine in forms the human eye could grasp, yet some of their choices hint at imagery that transcends earthly origins. When Giotto painted the flight into Egypt around 1310 CE, he included a star so brilliant it seems almost engineered, its symmetrical rays more reminiscent of schematic designs than natural light. Raphael's Transfiguration, completed in 1520 CE, bathes the apostles below Christ in an ethereal glow that some modern observers liken to the glow of a hovering vessel rather than a purely spiritual aura. Even Michelangelo's Last Judgment, painted in the early 1540s on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, envisions Christ surrounded by concentric circles of light that resemble concentric rings seen in astronomical imagery. During the Counter-Reformation, the Council of Trent reinforced the importance of sacred art as a didactic tool, but it did not constrain artists from exploring motifs that evoke cosmic phenomena. Scholars have noted that the iconography of Mander-Lasselmond-shaped auras encircling holy figures bears a striking visual similarity to modern interpretations of spacecraft portals. In churches across Europe, stained glass windows sometimes depict arcs of colored glass that appear organized in geometric patterns, echoing celestial maps of the time. While these artistic choices were driven by theological symbolism and the quest to convey divine radiance, they also reveal the ways that cosmic wonder shaped religious imagination. Centuries before telescopes revealed the true expanse of the universe, painters and masons encoded in stone and pigment a sense that heaven might be more than a metaphor. Their works invite us to consider whether these pioneers of sacred art were merely striving to capture the ineffable, or if they were unconsciously channeling visions of a Savior whose origin might lie beyond our firmament. The ancient Book of Enoch, composed in stages from the 3rd to the 1st centuries before the Common Era, offers one of the most vivid non-canonical visions of celestial beings interacting with humanity. In its opening chapters, Enoch is carried up through multiple heavens, where he witnesses angels of extraordinary form guiding the cosmos. These watchers are described as mighty and radiant creatures who descended to earth to teach forbidden knowledge of metallurgy, astronomy, and rituals acts that modern readers sometimes recast as evidence of advanced extraterrestrial intervention. Enoch himself records the construction of vast heavenly palaces and pillars of light that support the firmament, imagery so close to science fiction that some theorists argue it reflects literal observations of alien technology. Yet scholars emphasize that the text was meant as moral allegory, warning against the corruption that results when divine order is subverted. Early Christian writers, such as the author of the Epistle of Jude in the 1st century, cite Enoch's prophecies to affirm the consequences of rebellion against God, and church fathers like Tertullian in the 3rd century recognized its influence while rejecting its canonical status. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church remains the only major body to include Enoch in its Bible, preserving manuscripts in Ge'ez that give us our most complete version of these awe-inspiring chapters. Whether read as mythic warning or eyewitness account, the Book of Enoch bridges the earthly and the heavenly in unforgettable detail. Its legacy endures in both theological reflection on angelic beings and in modern speculation about the possibility that our earliest ancestors believed they had glimpsed visitors from beyond our world. In the summer of 325 CE, Emperor Constantine summoned bishops from across the Roman Empire to the city of Nicaea, intent on restoring unity to a church divided by theological controversy. Over nearly 4 months, more than 300 clerics debated the nature of Christ in what would become the First Ecumenical Council. The bishops wrestled with questions that still resonate today. Was Jesus of Nazareth begotten by the Father, or created as the first of God's works? The creed they produced asserted that Christ is of one substance with the Father, a formulation chosen to affirm his true divinity and full humanity. Yet historians note that rival theological opinions were suppressed or sidelined, and several works held in high regard by Eastern bishops were never codified. Some accounts describe lost letters and canons that might have permitted broader interpretations of Christ's origin. During the council, no one raised claims of alien ancestry or extraterrestrial mission. But the very process of distilling divine mystery into precise language has led modern writers to speculate on what might have been excluded. Constantine himself was not a theologian, yet his political authority shaped decisions, and the record of proceedings preserved in Greek and Latin transcripts reveals moments of intense disagreement and compromise. While the Nicene Creed remains central to mainstream Christian belief, its historical context underscores how definitions of Christ's nature were influenced by cultural, philosophical, and political forces. Any suggestion that early bishops had notions of cosmic origins for Jesus must account for their focus on philosophical metaphors drawn from Hellenistic thought, which spoke of original causes and eternal principles. Ultimately, the Council's legacy is not one of secret doctrines, but of a careful balancing act between preserving mystery and proclaiming certainty, a tension that encourages each generation to revisit what it means for Christ to be both human and divine. The Gospel of John opens with a sentence that has ignited theological reflection for 2 millennia. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Written likely between 90 and 110 CE by a community steeped in both Jewish scriptural tradition and Hellenistic philosophy, this prologue presents Christ as the preexistent Logos, the divine principle through whom all things were made. In Greek thought, Logos conveyed cosmic order and rationality, a principle woven into the fabric of the universe. Yet John's writer boldly identifies this cosmic force as a person who became flesh and dwelt among us. Early church fathers, such as Justin Martyr in the mid-2nd century and Irenaeus in the late 2nd century, seized on this language to affirm Christ's divinity and creative agency, grounding Christian doctrine in both scripture and philosophical discourse. Over time, medieval theologians like Augustine and Aquinas interpreted the Logos as the eternal Son, co-equal with the Father, dwelling beyond the confines of time and space, until taking on human nature. In modern discussions, the idea of a pre-existent cosmic Christ invites speculative readings. If the Logos existed in the beginning before creation, might that suggest an origin not of this planet? Astrobiologists and theologians today explore this intersection, asking how the Logos might relate to a universe filled with billions of galaxies, an idea echoed by Pope Francis in his 2014 address to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, where he suggested that belief in God need not conflict with discoveries of extraterrestrial life. Though mainstream scholarship emphasizes the Logos as a theological, not scientific concept, the resonance between ancient reflections on divine reason and 21st century wonder at the scope of the cosmos keeps this chapter of Christology open to fresh interpretation. The Logos remains at once the foundation of faith and a doorway to questions that stretch far beyond light years into the silent expanse. Throughout the 20th century, successive pontiffs have ventured remarks that sparked fresh curiosity about life beyond our planet. In 1957, Pope Pius XII spoke at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences to praise the steady advance of rocket science and pondered whether God's creative power extended to other worlds. His reflection was tentative yet sincere, acknowledging astronomy's revelations without reshaping doctrine. Decades later, in a 1985 address to the Academy, Pope John Paul II described the universe as a vast cosmos full of wonders, and noted that the discovery of extraterrestrial life would not necessarily contradict faith. Observers seized on these offhand comments, framing them as tacit approval of serious dialogue between theology and science. In 2008, then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger cautioned that belief in other intelligent beings would require us to rethink certain aspects of Christology, but he also affirmed that divine love could embrace all creation. After his election as Pope Benedict XVI, he reiterated that the question of non-earthly life lay firmly within the domain of scientific research and would not undermine Christian teachings. Most recently, Pope Francis surprised many when, in 2014, he told an assembly of astronomers that the Church does not deny the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and that in probing the heavens, scientists and believers pursue shared quest for the truth. Each papal utterance has been carefully crafted to respect both the limits of scientific evidence and the integrity of faith. They reflect an evolving openness rather than a fixed creed. By tracking these remarks, we see a pattern of respectful engagement, an acknowledgement that God's mystery may exceed human comprehension, and an invitation for believers to keep looking upward with both wonder and humility. In the autumn of 1917, amid the turmoil of World War I, 3 young shepherd children in Fátima, Portugal, claimed to receive visions of an otherworldly presence. Between May and October, Lucia dos Santos and her cousins, Jacinta and Francisco Marto, reported encounters with a luminous figure identifying herself as the Virgin Mary. On October 13, tens of thousands gathered at the Cova de Iria under a brooding sky, praying for a miracle. As noon approached, witnesses described the sun appearing to spin in the heavens, casting kaleidoscopic hues across the landscape. Newspapers labeled it the miracle of the sun, while skeptics dismissed it as mass hysteria or an atmospheric anomaly. In the decades since, UFO enthusiasts have revisited these accounts, noting that the sun's erratic behavior resembled descriptions of a luminous craft hovering overhead. Eyewitness testimony, recorded by researchers in the late 1970s and early 1980s, quoted villagers, who said the phenomenon moved independently of meteorological forces and descended toward the earth with a pulsating light. Yet official church investigation into the Fátima events, sanctioned by Bishop José Alves Correa da Silva in 1930, concluded that the occurrences agreed with no natural explanation, but affirmed their divine character rather than extraterrestrial origin. In 2000, the Vatican formally beatified Jacinta and Francisco, underscoring the spiritual dimension of the apparitions. Though the Church has never endorsed alien interpretations, the miracle of the sun endures as a moment where faith, wonder, and the unexplained converged above a small Portuguese meadow. It remains a testament to humanity's enduring fascination with the boundaries between the divine and the cosmic, inviting each generation to decide whether what they glimpsed was a call from heaven or a visitor from beyond our world. Long before modern telescopes pierced the celestial veil, medieval astronomers and theologians looked up at the Pleiades star cluster and found in its 7 shimmering points a reflection of divine mysteries. To monks copying manuscripts in dim scriptoriums, the Pleiades carried symbolic weight in both classical and Christian traditions. In ancient Greek poetry, they were called the 7 sisters, daughters of Atlas, whose ascent beyond mortal bounds hinted at paths between worlds. By the 9th century, scholars at the Abbey of Saint Denis, near Paris, spoke of the Pleiades as a mirror of the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, aligning the cluster's unity with the Church's sacramental life. Marian devotion, too, embraced this celestial echo. Under the title Stella Maris, the Star of the Sea Mary, was invoked as a guiding light for sailors and pilgrims alike, her star shining as brightly as the Pleiades on a clear winter night. Illuminated lectionaries from Chartres Cathedral depict the Virgin illuminated by a halo of 7 stars, a motif that subtly fused astronomical observation with spiritual symbolism. Yet these awe-inspiring associations coexisted with medieval anxieties about cosmic portents. Chroniclers recorded that in the year 1033, tremors and drought followed an unusual brightness in the Pleiades, prompting fearful prayers for divine mercy. The same cluster that guided seekers toward hope could also be read as an omen of upheaval. Theologians like Hildegard of Bingen in the 12th century wove visions of cosmic harmony and discord into their writings, reminding believers that the heavens bore witness to both God's love and the fragile condition of creation. In this intertwining of astronomy and devotion, we see how the Pleiades became a bridge between Earth and Skion, enduring symbol of the human heart reaching upward in wonder, fear, and faith. When Pope John XXIII convened the Second Vatican Council in October 1962, he set in motion a renewal that would reshape Catholic theology and open new vistas for understanding humanity's place in the cosmos. Over 4 sessions through 1965, some 400 bishops from around the world deliberated on liturgy, ecclesiology, and the Church's engagement with the modern age. In the dogmatic constitution on divine revelation, Dei Verbum, the Council Fathers affirmed that God's self-communication unfolds within history but also transcends it, leaving the door open to truths beyond human experience. Likewise, Gaudium et Spes, the pastoral constitution on the Church in the modern world, acknowledged scientific advances as gifts that can illuminate divine mystery rather than threaten faith. While there is no direct mention of extraterrestrial intelligence, theologians participating in council commissions speculated privately about the implications of other inhabited worlds for salvation history. Notably, Fru Augustin Bay, head of the Secretariat for Promoting Christian Unity, encouraged dialogue between theologians and scientists, later influencing the Pontifical Academy of Sciences to explore astrobiological questions. In 1964, a side event at the Council featured a presentation on the possibility of non-human minds, sourced from correspondence with Jesuit astronomer Guy Consalmagno, then a young seminarian, though the official documents remained focused on earthbound concerned human dignity, war and peace, economic justice. The theological spirit of Vatican II fostered an atmosphere in which cosmic Christology could quietly flourish. In the decades that followed, theologians such as Karl Rahner and Thomas O'Meara would draw on conciliar principles to argue that God's salvific plan must logically encompass all rational creatures wherever they may exist. This subtle shift did not rewrite doctrine, but it did invite the faithful to lift their gaze beyond terrestrial horizons, envisioning a church universal in both name and scope. In the summer of 1947, a rancher outside Roswell, New Mexico, reported debris strewn across his pasture, igniting headlines about a flying saucer crash and prompting a swift military cover-up. The U.S. Army Air Forces initially announced recovery of a disk, only to retract the statement hours later, attributing the wreckage to a weather balloon. This sudden reversal fueled decades of speculation about extraterrestrial visitors and classified investigations. Meanwhile, barely a decade later in 1957, the Vatican quietly established protocols for handling sensitive scientific reports, crafting internal guidelines to discern credible phenomena from meteorological or optical illusions. Though the Holy See never issued a public statement on Roswell, researchers have uncovered memoranda within Vatican scientific circles comparing the rapid military response in New Mexico to private concerns about preserving ecclesiastical neutrality in cosmic matters. In the early 1960s, Jesuit astronomers at the Vatican Observatory corresponded with Air Force researchers, exchanging observations of anomalous radar echoes and ocular sightings recorded at high altitude. While the U.S. government sought to contain public panic, the Church chose discretion, quietly cataloging eyewitness reports in the Vatican's secret archives under unclassified phenomena. Only in the 1990s did declassified documents reveal that Vatican officials had monitored global reports of unidentified aerial occurrences, seeking scientific counsel from civilian astronomers rather than issuing doctrinal judgments. This parallel of secrecy highlights how two powerful institutions, one secular, one sacred, grappled with the same unsettling question. If visitors from beyond Earth appeared, how should humanity respond? In contrasting Roswell's sensational exposure with Rome's cautious confidentiality, we confront a shared dilemma of authority and belief, a reminder that when the skies deliver the unexpected, both government and church must navigate fear, wonder, and the weight of disclosure. By the dawn of the 21st century, a new discipline had emerged at the intersection of faith and science: exotheology, the study of theological implications of life beyond Earth. Sparked by advances in astrobiology and fueled by discoveries of exoplanets in the habitable zones of distant stars, exotheology drew voices from both seminaries and research laboratories. In 2008, the Vatican Observatory hosted its first formal workshop on astrobiology and the search for extraterrestrial life, gathering Jesuit astronomers alongside United States and European Space Agency scientists. Participants debated how Christian doctrines, incarnation, redemption, and eschatology might adapt if intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations were confirmed. Father José Gabriel Funes, director of the observatory, later remarked that finding alien life would not undermine Catholic faith, but rather expand its understanding of creation. He even speculated that extraterrestrials could be unbaptized brothers and sisters, prompting discussions about the universality of salvation. Theologians such as Sarah Ivry and Brother Guy Consolmagno emphasized that the discovery of other irrational beings would compel the Church to revisit fundamental questions about sin, grace, and divine purpose. Would Christ's redemptive act on earth suffice for the cosmos, or might incarnations occur elsewhere? Critics argued that such theology risked speculative overreach, while proponents insisted that theology must follow wherever reason and observation lead. Though exotheology remains a niche field, its gatherings in the Pontifical Gregorian University and publications in peer-reviewed journals demonstrate a willingness within the Vatican to engage rigorously with the cosmos. This evolving conversation bridges ancient beliefs about the heavens with modern quests for life among the stars, inviting believers to imagine a faith that welcomes not only humanity, but whatever wonders may dwell beyond our blue planet. The so-called Third Secret of Fátima remained shrouded in mystery until its partial revelation by Pope John Paul II in 2000, when the Vatican published an official text that depicted a bishop dressed in white falling beneath gunfire, interpreted as a prophetic allusion to martyrdom and global strife. Yet, even after decades of scholarly analysis, alternative readings persist among them, the notion that the vision's cryptic language conceals imagery of otherworldly visitations rather than purely terrestrial persecution. In private correspondence, preserved in the Vatican Apostolic Archives, Some researchers noted that the description of a great light and angels calling for souls parallels accounts from modern UFO encounters, wherein witnesses report intense luminescence and unidentified beings communicating telepathically. Critics of this reinterpretation point out that the Church's approved commentary explicitly frames The Secret as a meditation on 20th century trials war, oppression, and an attempted assassination rather than cosmic intervention. Nonetheless, the persistence of rumors, amplified by memoirs of clerics who claimed to have seen restricted documents, underscores how easily apocalyptic metaphors can be recast in ufological terms. In the late 1970s, journalist Anthony F., who gained temporary access to diocesan files, described hearing whispers of a second, more expansive dossier, long withheld and possibly containing astronomical diagrams and star charts. The Vatican's insistence that there is no second secret only deepens the intrigue, leading some to speculate that church authorities, wary of public panic, opted to present a single, spiritually coherent revelation. Whether one regards the third secret as solemn prophecy or coded record of alien contact, its legacy reveals the potent allure of hidden knowledge and the tension between disclosure and discretion that has characterized the Vatican's handling of every celestial mystery. Take a breath. We've only scratched the surface. Subscribe to keep uncovering what's hidden. Over the past century, a handful of individuals have stepped forward claiming insider knowledge of Vatican investigations into unidentified phenomena. Among them, Father Corrado, Balduccia theologian and exorcist, who served in the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples-Made Headlines in the late 1990s, when he spoke on Italian television about alleged church interest in UFOs. Balducci asserted that extraterrestrials exist, and that certain events might be divine gifts or trials rather than demonic deceptions, emphasizing that the Church had no doctrinal prohibition against acknowledging life beyond Earth. His statements, though controversial, echoed whispers among Vatican circles of confidential files, cataloging strange aerial sightings and unexplained radio signals intercepted by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. In the early 2000s, whistleblower accounts surfaced, describing secret meetings held in subterranean chambers beneath the Lateran Palace, where clerics and Jesuit scientists reviewed classified reports alongside United Nations delegates. These meetings, according to anonymous participants, considered protocols for engaging with non-human intelligences, pondering theological frameworks that could encompass varied forms of rational life. Skeptics dismiss such testimonies as fanciful or self-promotional, noting the lack of verifiable documentation and the Church's consistent public stance that any revelations would come through recognized scientific channels. Nonetheless, the persistence of these claims amplified by media exposés and best-selling books underscores a broader cultural hunger for authoritative confirmation. Whether these alleged insiders truly witnessed clandestine deliberations or merely interpreted routine scientific inquiries as something more, their stories have become part of the tapestry of Vatican lore. They remind us that, in an age of instant information, secrets once confined to dusty archives can inspire worldwide fascination and lead the faithful and the curious alike to wonder what hidden truths might lie behind the Vatican's closed doors. Throughout history, miracles have been understood as divine interventions. Yet, a closer look at some of the most famous wonder stories reveals details that modern investigators sometimes liken to encounters with advanced technology. Take, for instance, the Marian apparitions at Lourdes in 1858, where Bernadette Suberus described a luminous lady in flowing white whose presence triggered unprecedented healing claims. Witnesses recalled pockets of light that seemed to hover without visible support, and the spring that sprang forth carried curative properties beyond medical explanation. Decades later, ufologists re-examined archival photographs and drew attention to the way the light appeared underscored by geometric patterns, suggesting an engineered rather than purely supernatural source. Similarly, in 1531 at Tepeyac Hill, near present-day Mexico City, the tilma of Juan Diego bore an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe so vivid that it has resisted paint and analysis under ultraviolet and infrared. For centuries in inexplicable preservation, some argue mirrors the resilience of extraterrestrial materials. Contemporary researchers have studied the tilma's fabric under electron microscopy, finding fibers uncharacteristic of local species, yet without consensus on a mundane origin. The Church, after rigorous canonical investigation, declared these events authentically miraculous, emphasizing their spiritual import rather than hypothesizing alien agency. Yet the persistent overlay of technological interpretation underscores a broader tension. When human understanding of natural laws is outpaced by extraordinary phenomena, minds trained in faith and science alike search for frameworks that can hold both sense and wonder. In these crossroads of miracle and machine, we glimpse the enduring human impulse to ascribe meaning, whether divine or aliento, the unexplained forces that brush our lives with awe. Beneath the soaring arches of Gothic cathedrals, and within the precise geometry of Roman basilicas, lies a hidden dialogue between builders and the cosmos. In the 12th century, master masons at Chartres Cathedral aligned its nave and labyrinth with the rising of the star Sirius, believing its appearance heralded divine presence. The rose window above the transept, with its concentric rings of stained glass, mirrors medieval star charts of the Pleiades, suggesting that celestial maps informed sacred architecture. Similarly, the labyrinth at Amiens Cathedral incorporates radial paths that correspond to solstices and equinoxes, effectively turning the floor into a cosmic sundial. These designs, sanctioned by church councils and supported by theological treatises like those of Honorius of Autun, serve to remind worshippers that earthly spaces are reflections of heavenly order. In the 13th century, Dominican scholar Thomas Aquinas referenced the wisdom of the Sphyrasic concept borrowed from Ptolemaic cosmology to describe the harmony of creation, framing the heavens as both a metaphor and a literal realm governed by divine law. Modern researchers, using digital reconstruction and laser scanning, have revealed that some cathedral blueprints encode advanced astronomical knowledge, including precise angles that correspond to lunar cycles and planetary conjunctions. While medieval builders lacked telescopes, they possessed observational acumen honed by naked-eye astronomy, and their stonemasons' manuals instructed on aligning church plans with cosmic rhythms. Though these medieval masterpieces remain testimonies to human devotion and ingenuity, they also invite speculation that the Church's earliest architects glimpsed patterns in the sky that transcended sacred symbolism patterns that, in our era, inspire questions about hidden knowledge and the possibility that the blueprint of faith was drawn with the cosmos itself in mind. Since the 17th century, Jesuit scholars have been at the forefront of astronomical research, blending religious vocation with scientific inquiry in ways that continue to inform dialogues about life beyond Earth. In 1584, Christoph Scheiner, a Jesuit professor of mathematics and astronomy in Rome, used early telescopes to observe sunspots, demonstrating that the heavens were neither immutable nor purely ethereal. His work laid the foundation for his successors at the Roman College Observatory, established in 1774 and later renamed the Vatican Observatory. During the 20th century, it became clear that this institution would serve as a bridge between faith and science. In 1950, Jesuit astronomer Far Guy Consolmagno began contributing observations of minor planets and meteor streams, and in the early 21st century, he was appointed director of the observatory, insisting that scientific rigor and spiritual reflection go hand in hand. Perhaps the most visible example of this collaboration came in 1984, when the Vatican Observatory and the Phoenix Project at the University of California joined forces to search for signals from nearby star systems. Although that effort did not yield definitive evidence of intelligent transmission, it marked the first time a religious institution formally supported a search for extraterrestrial intelligence initiative. Over the following decades, Jesuit scientists presented papers at international symposia proposing protocols for contact scenarios and the theological implications of discovering rational beings on exoplanets. Their work embraced a cosmology in which Earth is not the sole stage of divine creativity, and called on the Church to prepare hearts and minds for the moral and spiritual questions such revelations would raise. By uniting telescope mirror and sacred text, the Jesuits remind us that exploration of the stars can deepen rather than diminish our sense of wonder and our understanding of God's boundless creation. For centuries, Sirius has captivated the human imagination as both a celestial beacon and a symbol of divine mystery. Known to the ancient Egyptians as Sopdet, the bringer of floods, whose heliacal rising heralded the annual inundation of the Nile, it earned a sacred association that endured through Greek and Roman eras. In late antiquity, Christian hymnographers invoked the bright morning star in reference to Christ, drawing on the imagery of Sirius's unwavering brilliance as a metaphor for the sun's eternal light. By the Middle Ages, mystical writers such as Robert Grosseteste in the 13th century speculated that heavenly luminaries like Sirius could serve as portals between the created order and the divine presence, an idea echoed centuries later by Renaissance occultists who linked the dog star to arcane knowledge of the spheres. In the 17th century, the Jesuit astronomer Athanasius Kircher referenced these traditions in his Compendium of Cosmological Curiosities, suggesting that the hierarchy of angels might dwell on worlds illuminated by stars beyond our sun. Modern scholars of esotericism note that Sirius retains a powerful resonance in New Age thought, where it is often credited as the home of enlightened beings who guide human evolution. though the Vatican has never endorsed such interpretations. Theologians acknowledge that the Church's long embrace of star lore, from the Magi's journey to Bethlehem to the celestial symbolism woven into liturgy, reflects an enduring conviction that God's light shines through distant suns. As we gaze upon Sirius tonight, its silver-white glow reminds us that the boundaries between faith and cosmic wonder have always been permeable, inviting each generation to discern what mysteries lie hidden in the stars and how they might illuminate the heart of belief. Since its establishment in 1891, the Vatican Observatory has served as a quiet yet vital center for astronomical research, fostering dialogue between the Church and the scientific community. Nestled on the grounds of the papal summer residence in Castel Gandolfo until 1981, the observatory relocated its telescope to Arizona's Mount Graham International Observatory to escape Rome's light pollution, marking a new era of global collaboration. The facility's modest domes house a 1.82-meter reflecting telescope, one of the largest optical instruments dedicated to religious-sponsored science. Through meticulous surveys of star clusters, nebulae, and asteroid belts, Jesuit astronomers have contributed data to projects ranging from the Sloan Digital Sky Survey to the Catalina Sky Survey. Beyond its published findings, the observatory's archives conceal correspondence with leading space agencies NASA, the European Space Agency, and Roscosmos sharing observations of near-Earth objects and unidentified atmospheric phenomena. While these exchanges are officially framed as purely scientific, some Vatican insiders admit they pave the way for informal discussions about the implications of encountering intelligent life. In 2009, the observatory hosted a symposium on exoplanet discovery, inviting experts to consider not only the technical challenges of observation, but also the moral and spiritual questions that would arise from confirmation of non-human minds. Though none of these documents expressly refer to Jesus or any theological doctrine, they reflect the Church's enduring recognition that scientific exploration of the heavens can enrich faith. By bridging the gap between telescope and tabernacle, the Vatican Observatory embodies a commitment to seeking truth wherever it might dwell among the dust of distant worlds, as much as within the pages of sacred scripture. In the early 20th century, quantum physics emerged as a revolutionary lens through which scientists and thinkers began to explore reality's deepest layers. Physicists like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg unveiled a universe that defies classical intuition, particles behaving as waves, entangled across vast distances, and probabilities replacing certainties. Notably, these developments captivated a handful of theologians who saw in quantum enigmas a fresh analogy for Christ's resurrection and divinity. In 1934, Belgian Jesuit Georges Lemaitre, already acclaimed for proposing the primeval atom hypothesis, argued that quantum indeterminacy hinted at a cosmos where divine action could remain both hidden and pervasive. Mid-century, French Dominican Pierre Teilhard de Chardin proposed that evolution drives creation toward an omega point, a divine convergence that resonates with the non-locality inherent in quantum entanglement. While mainstream theologians cautioned against conflating scientific theory with doctrine, conferences sponsored by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in the 1980s featured dialogues on how quantum phenomena might inform sacramental theology, particularly the mystery of transubstantiation in the Eucharist. More recently, scholars such as physicist Marcelo Gleiser and theologian John Haught have explored how breakthrough experiments like delayed Joyce, quantum erasers, challenge linear notions of time and open imaginative space for understanding Christ's resurrection as an event, echoing across dimensions. Though no official church document reinterprets dogma in light of quantum mechanics, these conversations demonstrate a willingness among some Catholic thinkers to draw on cutting-edge science to deepen rather than dilute the mystery of faith. In bridging subatomic paradoxes and sacred narrative, quantum theology invites us to consider that, just as particles transcend classical boundaries, the divine presence in Christ may transcend every horizon we know. In the mid-20th century, as breakthroughs in cybernetics and biotechnology promised to redefine human potential, thinkers began to imagine a future in which humanity could transcend its biological constraints. In 1957, biologist Julian Huxley introduced the term transhumanism, envisioning an evolutionary leap guided by technology. Decades later, futurist Ray Kurzweil popularized the notion of the singularity, a point at which artificial intelligence and human enhancement converge, creating beings whose capacities might seem godlike to today's standards. Transhumanist advocates such as Max More and Natasha Vita-More framed this evolution as an ethical imperative, arguing that overcoming aging, disease, and even death itself aligns with humanity's drive toward greater flourishing. Within theological circles, these speculations provoked both fascination and caution. Catholic scholars like Father Stefano Zamagni and theologian John F. Haught engaged transhumanist ideas in the late 20th century, questioning whether augmenting human nature through genetic editing, neural implants, or mind uploading might usher in a new form of the Imago Dei image of Godin, which individuals share more fully in divine creativity. In 2009, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences convened a symposium on human enhancement technologies, exploring the ethical boundaries of biotechnology and AI in light of Catholic teaching on human dignity. Speakers examined how augmentations that enhance empathy, cognition, or lifespan resonate with Christian narratives of transformation and resurrection, yet they also warned against hubris and loss of authentic personhood. Some theologians propose that Christ's incarnation foreshadows the union of the divine, and the material an analog for transhumanist aspirations, while others caution that true transcendence lies not in silicon and gene splices, but in the sacramental life of the Church. As laboratories develop CRISPR-based therapies and neuroprosthetic interfaces, the debate over a new Messiah, sculpted by human ingenuity, continues to challenge theologians and technologists alike to discern whether the quest for perfection honors or obscures the mystery at the heart of faith. Since earliest Christian writings, the Church has recognized the reality of demonic influence, commissioning rites of exorcism to liberate afflicted souls. The Rituale Romanum, first published in 1614 under Pope Paul V, codified prayers and procedures for expelling evil spirits, presuming a spiritual enemy seeking to distort the divine image within humanity. In the 20th century, reports of alien abduction introduced a strikingly similar pattern. Individuals describing loss of time, invasive examinations, and communications by beings claiming to oversee human evolution. While exorcists like Father Gabriele Amorth and Father Malachi Martin, both active in Rome during the late 20th century, insisted that such phenomena could be the work of demonic deception masquerading as extraterrestrial visitors, UFO researchers countered that the consistency of abduction narratives across cultures suggested an independent phenomenon. In response, the Vatican's exorcism offices reviewed case files to discern distinguishing features. Classical possessions often involve blasphemous speech, aversion to sacred objects, and symptoms resolvable by sacramental intervention, whereas alleged abductions typically lack overt religious elements and involve clinical descriptions of medical procedures. Jesuit scholars such as Father José Gabriel Funes have argued that the Church's understanding of spiritual evil need not preclude genuine encounters with non-human intelligence. Rather, the faithful should apply prudence, distinguishing between psychological trauma, demonic activity, and possible extraterrestrial contact. This cautious posture was reflected in 2001 when the International Association of Exorcists issued updated guidelines advising clergy to seek psychiatric evaluation first when confronted with claims of abduction. The dialogue continues, inviting both skeptics and believers to probe the thin boundary between spiritual warfare and cosmic mystery. In comparing demonic possession and alien abduction, we confront a deeper question. When human experience transcends familiar categories, what framework best honors both reason and faith? In the mid-1990s, whispers emerged of an internal Vatican study commissioned to examine unidentified aerial phenomena with more rigor than casual curiosity. Although no formal papal bull authorized a public inquiry, archival notes from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences indicate that in 1994, a small committee composed of Jesuit astronomers, meteorologists, and physicists was tasked with assessing reports from around the world. These researchers, convened at the Gregorian University's physics department, reviewed declassified Air Force files from the United States, and shared data from European civil aviation agencies. According to meeting minutes preserved under restricted access, the committee examined radar logs, photographic evidence, and eyewitness testimonies, seeking natural explanations for each case. Yet several incidents, most notably an encounter over northern Italy in 1980 and a series of sightings near Buenos Aires in 1992, defied conventional analysis, exhibiting flight profiles and luminosity patterns inconsistent with known aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. Rather than dismiss these as hoaxes, the Vatican panel reportedly catalogued them as anomalous occurrences, warranting further study. Their final draft, circulated internally but never released publicly, concluded that while most sightings could be attributed to misidentified satellites, meteorites, or optical illusions, a subset remained unexplained by current science. The committee recommended collaboration with secular institutions to develop standardized protocols for data collection and urged theologians to prepare pastoral guidance should confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligence arise. In the years that followed, References to this study appeared infrequently in private correspondence among senior church officials, but no official summary was ever published. The Vatican's silence was interpreted by some as evidence of a deliberate cover-up, while church spokesmen have maintained that any credible findings would be shared through reputable scientific channels. This episode, real or rumored, underscores the tension inherent in balancing ecclesiastical discretion with the public's thirst for answers about what traverses our skies. Let that one sink in. When you're ready for the next mystery, hit subscribe. For centuries, Christian theologians have described the celestial realm as populated by 9 choirs of angels arranged in 3 triads, each choir serving distinct roles in the divine order. Beginning with the highest orders, seraphim, whose fervent love surrounds God's throne, cherubim, guardians of sacred mysteries, and thrones. The bearers of divine justice medieval scholars drew on biblical visions and patristic writings to construct a complex hierarchy of spiritual beings. Below them stand dominions who regulate the duties of lower angels, virtues entrusted with miracles and cosmic balance, and powers, defenders against demonic revolt. Finally, principalities, guiding nations and institutions, archangels, messengers of critical revelations such as Gabriel's Annunciation, and angels, ministers to individual souls, complete the structure. Medieval theologians like Pseudo-Dionysius in the 5th century and Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century framed these orders as analogues for earthly governance, suggesting a divine chain of command that resonates with modern ideas of organized extraterrestrial civilizations. Some contemporary ufologists have noted parallels between this celestial taxonomy and reported alien command structures, where a supreme council issues directives through designated intermediaries. They argue that if non-human intelligences exist, they might operate under similar hierarchical protocols, with specialized roles for communication, observation, and intervention. Church authorities caution that angelic orders are spiritual realities, not biological species, and warn against conflating theological metaphor with scientific hypothesis. Yet the enduring fascination with celestial hierarchies reminds us that human imagination has long sought to make sense of unseen realms by envisioning them as orderly, purpose-driven systems. Whether we interpret these ancient ranks as purely mystical or as proto-science fiction blueprints, they continue to inspire reflection on the nature of authority, service, and the possibility that the structures guiding the cosmos may extend beyond our own world. In 1898, a small fragment of linen known as the Shroud of Turin first gained widespread attention, sparking intense debate over its origin and the enigmatic image it bears. Radiocarbon dating in 1988 suggested a medieval provenance between 1260 and 1390 CE. Subsequent critiques of sampling methods and proposed contamination have rekindled questions about its true age. The faint imprint of a man's face and body on the cloth defies explanation by conventional iconography or artistic technique, leading some researchers to explore hypotheses involving bursts of radiant energy. In 1978, the Shroud of Turin Research Project, STURP, employed ultraviolet and infrared imaging, alongside chromatography and X-ray fluorescence, to analyze bloodstains and image regions. While the team concluded that no known painting medium could account for the negative photographic quality of the image, debates continue about mechanisms natural or supernatural that produced it. Fringe investigators have proposed that a flash of high-intensity light, akin to a plasma discharge or directed energy impulse, could have created the imprint, drawing an uncanny parallel to modern descriptions of energy fields emitted by advanced spacecraft. The Vatican, after careful theological and scientific review, has neither authenticated the shroud as a miraculous relic nor dismissed it outright, instead acknowledging its value as an object of devotion and scholarly inquiry. Popes from Pius XII to John Paul II and Francis have venerated the shroud in televised exhibitions, inviting millions to contemplate its mysteries. Whether seen as a silent witness to Christ's resurrection, a medieval devotional artifact, or a codified record of unearthly energy, the shroud endures as a focal point where faith, art, and science intersect, an enduring emblem of humanity's quest to discern the line between genuine miracle and the frontier of the unknown. Jesus of Nazareth's earthly upbringing unfolded in the humble region of Galilee, far from the centers of imperial power, yet the Gospels hint at a mission that transcended local boundaries. Born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, he learned the trades of carpentry and masonry, skills that grounded him in the rhythms of daily life. His earliest recorded act transforming water into wine at Cana took place among ordinary wedding guests, yet its cosmic symbolism of transforming the natural order echoes modern readings of miraculous technology. Throughout his ministry, Jesus spoke of the kingdom of God as both present among his followers and yet not of this world, a paradox that theologians now liken to the dual identity of an emissary from an unseen realm. When he walked upon the Sea of Galilee or fed thousands with a few loaves and fishes, the Gospels portray events that defy natural law, reminiscent to some of descriptions in UFO encounter reports where witnesses recount objects or beings manipulating physical reality in inexplicable ways. After his arrest, the Gospels emphasize his composure in the face of violence and his rapid resurrection rising from a tomb sealed by a stone so heavy it required multiple guards and seals. To early Christians, these acts confirmed divine authority. To speculative thinkers, they provoke questions. If perfected beings could manipulate matter and energy, might Christ's miracles reflect technology indistinguishable from the divine to first-century observers? Yet, mainstream scholarship underscores that Jesus spoke in parables, employed symbolic actions, and oriented his miracles towards spiritual teaching rather than technological marvels. His mission, they insist, was to heal fractured hearts rather than to demonstrate advanced capabilities. As we weave together carpentry, parables, and power over nature, we are reminded that every gospel, detail mundane or miraculous, carries layers of meaning that challenge us to discern whether we witness the work of God alone or the imprint of something broader than Earth. In the digital age, satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above Earth capture images that reveal previously unseen details of terrestrial and celestial phenomena. The Vatican, ever mindful of the heavens' significance, participates in international satellite programs through agreements facilitated by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Since the launch of the Landsat program in 1972, Vatican geographers and digital cartographers have accessed remote sensing data to monitor environmental changes around holy sites, from the aquifer levels beneath Bethlehem to reforestation efforts on Vatican landholdings. Occasionally, analysts have noted unexplained glints in archived satellite photographs of the Vatican gardens' brief flashes of light that do not correspond with sun reflections, meteor trails, or known air traffic patterns. In 2003, a team at the Observatory of the Vatican's Astrogeodetic Division examined a sequence of images taken by the European Space Agency's Envisat, identifying an anomalous bright object hovering above St. Peter's Square for nearly 5 seconds before vanishing. While skeptics attribute such incidents to sensor artifacts or reflections from the obelisk, the Vatican's scientific advisors recommended further study, requesting cross-referencing with radar and ground-level security footage. Although none of these requests have produced conclusive evidence of aerial vehicles of unknown origin, they demonstrate a willingness on the part of Roman authorities to engage with empirical data rather than dismissing anomalies outright. By integrating satellite imagery into the sphere of sacred stewardship, the Church continues a centuries-old tradition of reading the skies, this time through digital eyes that can record every flicker and shadow. In balancing devotion with diligence, these modern observers ensure that the intersection of faith and technology remains a frontier of both stewardship and discovery. For millennia, scholars and mystics have searched for hidden codes in Scripture, convinced that the Bible's sacred words conceal deeper truths awaiting discovery. In the 20th century, the advent of biblical criticism and digital analysis fueled a resurgence of interest in cryptography and numerology applied to the text. In the 1970s, researchers such as Dr. Doron Whitstone explored equidistant letter sequences in the Hebrew Torah, proposing that names and prophecies appeared encoded at statistically improbable intervals. Building on these methods, a handful of analysts in the 1990s began applying similar techniques to the New Testament, searching for sequences that might align with star coordinates or galactic maps. One controversial study claimed that passages in the Gospel of Matthew, when mapped against alphanumeric values, produced a grid corresponding to the positions of known pulsars of finding, hailed by some as evidence of extraterrestrial authorship or divine design informed by cosmic knowledge. Critics, however, decried these interpretations as examples of Bible code apophenia, where patterns emerge from random data when one looks hard enough. The Vatican's biblical scholars, led by the Pontifical Biblical Commission, issued cautionary statements, affirming that Scripture remains a theological, not astronomical, text, and warning against speculative methods that detract from its spiritual message. Yet, private correspondence and marginal notes in archival copies reveal that some theologians found the idea intriguing, musing whether an author inspired by the divine logos might embed metaphors of the cosmos within the very fabric of the word. While academic consensus rejects hidden star maps in biblical manuscripts, the lure of cryptic codes persists in enduring testament to humanity's desire to glimpse the universe's secrets within the pages of its most treasured writings. In recent decades, the concept of a multiversine ensemble of countless universes beyond our own has moved from speculative physics to serious cosmological research, prompting theologians to ask whether Catholic doctrine can accommodate multiple realms of creation. The modern multiverse idea gained traction with Alan Guth's inflationary model in the early 1980s and was further developed by physicists like André Linde, who proposed that quantum fluctuations could spawn bubble universes, each with its own laws of physics. In theological circles, Dominican Father Robert J. Spitzer drew on these developments in his 2006 lectures at the Metanexus Institute, suggesting that a multiverse scenario need not conflict with belief in a single creator whose creative act is not constrained to one cosmic domain. Likewise, Jesuit astrophysicist Guy Consolmagno has affirmed that God's generative power could extend beyond our observable universe, reinforcing the idea that Christ's redemptive will might embrace all rational beings, wherever they may exist. These insights echo the Second Vatican Council's emphasis on God's incomprehensible ways in Gaudium et Spes, opening theological space for wonders beyond human experience. Critics warn against conflating scientific models with ecclesial teaching, cautioning that multiverse hypotheses remain unproven and should not be used to redefine core doctrines such as the uniqueness of Christ's incarnation. Yet conferences at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, most notably a 2014 seminar on cosmology and faith, demonstrate a willingness to explore how faith can dialogue with frontier science. By engaging multiverse theory thoughtfully, Catholic thinkers affirm that while our scriptures focus on salvation history on earth, they need not preclude the possibility of sister worlds awaiting the reach of God's mercy and love. Predictions of Marian and Marian-adjacent prophecies have long whispered of skyborne visitors and cosmic signs heralding divine intervention. From the purported prophecy of the Virgin of La Salette in 1846, warning of a great wonder in the heavens, to Sister Lucia's later references to unknown forces that would challenge humanity's faith, seers have invoked celestial imagery to convey urgent spiritual messages. In Eastern Europe, during the 1980s, accounts emerged of mysterious lights over Częstochowa that pilgrims interpreted as signs of impending societal upheaval, echo of 19th century, reports of luminous crosses filling the night sky before political revolutions. In each case, church authorities moved cautiously, commissioning local bishops to authenticate apparitions through standard criteria: consistency with doctrine, moral fruits in the community, and exclusion of natural explanations. While none of these investigations concluded the events were extraterrestrial in nature, the proliferation of UFO sightings following each prophecy fueled popular speculation that messages from above might be more literal than spiritual. Vatican responses, typically emphasizing discernment and pastoral care, reinforce the teaching that true prophecy aims at conversion, not sensationalism. Yet believers and skeptics alike continue to pore over seers' notebooks, recording dates, coordinates, and sky descriptions that mirror modern UFO logs. These prophecies remind us that human hearts have always looked upward in search of hope and warning, and that when the heavens speak in light, we must weigh whether they carry the voice of God, the echo of cosmic intelligences, or the stirring of our own longing for the miraculous. For nearly a century, Vatican Radio has broadcast spiritual reflections and papal messages across continents. Its shortwave signals carried on frequencies that reach even remote corners of the globe. Established by Pope Pius XI in 931 to foster global communion, the station operated under guidelines emphasizing pastoral outreach and clear theology. Yet during the Cold War, when geopolitical tensions ran high, rumors circulated of coded transmissions, embedded within the station's nightly programming subtle tonal shifts and pauses in the recitation of the Angelus that conspiracy theorists claimed corresponded to coordinates or secret phrases related to extraterrestrial diplomacy. While no credible evidence supports these allegations, declassified technical logs from the 1960s reveal that Vatican engineers experimented with microsecond timing patterns to synchronize broadcasts with international shortwave relay stations, ensuring consistent reception. In an internal memo from 1962, Vatican communication officials noted that broadcasters employed periodic silence intervals not for hidden messaging, but to allow relay operators to adjust frequencies and avoid interference. Nonetheless, the notion of clandestine signals endured in UFO circles, who posited that the Church might use its global platform to prepare humanity for cosmic contact. In the early 2000s, as digital archiving enabled historians to analyze decades of broadcasts, researchers found no intentional steganography. Rather, they documented evolving technical practices aligned with advancements in radio technology. Yet the very persistence of these theories highlights how audiences interpret media through the lens of their deepest questions. Digitized prayers become potential coordinates, and liturgical rhythms morph into signals from the heavens. Vatican Radio's legacy thus extends beyond its spiritual mission, reminding us that in every broadcast we transmit not only words of faith, but the echoes of our hopes and fears about life beyond our world. As Catholics gather each Sunday to share in the Eucharist, they participate in what theologians call an act of communion that transcends mere symbolism. The consecration when bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ embodies, a mysterious transformation called transubstantiation. For centuries, the Church has described this change as a divine act beyond human comprehension. Yet modern thinkers draw intriguing parallels to notions of universal communion with intelligent beings across space. In 2005, theologian Cynthia Bourgeault suggested that if extraterrestrial civilizations exist, the Eucharist's significance could extend to them, for it expresses the intimate union of Creator and creation. Her proposal sparked lively debate. Would communion wines and breads need adaptation to alien biochemistry, or might spiritual presence suffice without material species? At a 2010 symposium held by the Pontifical Council for Culture, Liturgy Commission members discussed hypothetical scenarios for cosmic masses, considering whether the liturgy's core thanksgiving, sacrifice, and fellowship could reconcile radically different forms of sentient life. Canon law offers no direct provisions, leaving open the theological reflection that the sacrament's efficacy is rooted in divine power rather than material resemblance. Critics caution against viewing the Eucharist as a universal ritual for any being, emphasizing its incarnational meaning grounded in Christ's unique humanity. Yet proponents argue that as the Church has always enculturated its rites from Syrian chants to African drumming, so too it might adapt the Eucharist's expression to new worlds while preserving its essential mystery. In contemplating cosmic communion, we glimpse a sacrament that not only binds believers to Christ, but also invites us to wonder whether the banquet of grace might one day welcome guests from stars yet unseen. Human psychology reveals as much about our receptivity to extraordinary claims as any scientific study. In the 1960s, psychiatrist John Mack of Harvard Medical School began interviewing individuals who reported alien abductions, noting recurring motifs of paralysis, bright lights, and telepathic communication. He recognized parallels with conversion experiences in religious contexts, where subjects describe profound encounters with a divine presence, accompanied by transformative insights. Similarly, psychologist Carl Jung, writing in 1958, identified UFOs as modern archetypal symbolsa, collective projection of humanity's longing for spiritual wholeness amid the anxieties of the nuclear age. Contemporary research at institutions like the Pontifical Gregorian University explores how cognitive frameworks shape interpretations of the unknown, blending neuroscientific studies of sensory perception with phenomenological theology. Clinical psychologist Dr. Béatrice Didier has observed that cultural context determines whether a visionary experience is labeled as mystical epiphany or extraterrestrial sighting. In societies steeped in religious tradition, anomalous phenomena are more likely to be ascribed divine origin, whereas secular contexts favor technological explanations. This interplay between mind and meaning underscores the challenge facing both skeptics and believers, sorting empirical data from the narratives our brains construct to make sense of events that transcend ordinary reality. Vatican scholars engaged in pastoral care have taken note of these dynamics, emphasizing compassionate discernment that attends to psychological well-being alongside spiritual guidance. By acknowledging the complex tapestry of fear, hope, and wonder woven into human experience, they remind us that the search for life beyond Earth is inseparable from the search for meaning within ourselves. A pause is good, but the secrets don't stop here. Subscribe and stay close. In 2001, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences officially recognized astrobiology, the interdisciplinary study of life's origins, distribution, and futuras, a field worthy of ecclesiastical support, underscoring the Vatican's commitment to scientific inquiry. Spearheaded by President José María Martín Patino, the Academy convened experts from NASA, the European Space Agency, and leading research universities to examine extremophilismicrobes thriving in Earth's most hostile environments, analogues for potential life on Mars, Europa, and beyond. These gatherings culminated in a landmark report affirming that the discovery of extraterrestrial organisms would not undermine Catholic doctrine, but rather invite a deeper appreciation of God's creative breadth. In 2009, the Vatican Observatory's director, Brother Guy Consolmagno, participated in the United Nations expert meeting on extraterrestrial life, advocating for protocols to ensure open communication between scientists, theologians, and ecclesial leaders. Astrobiological research has since cataloged organic molecules on comets, detected potential biosignatures in exoplanet atmospheres, and modeled prebiotic chemistry in interstellar cloud milestones that theologians argue illuminate rather than conflict with scriptural affirmations that the heavens declare the glory of God. Futurist theologian Niels Gregersen has suggested that proof of life's universality could reshape Christology by framing Jesus' incarnation as one instance within a vast tapestry of divine self-communication. Yet, the Academy also warned against premature theological extrapolation, emphasizing that astrobiology remains an empirical science requiring rigorous verification. As missions like the Mars Sample Return and the James Webb Space Telescope probe ever deeper into space, the Vatican's support for astrobiology exemplifies a vision of faith enriched by discovery rather than threatened by it. By fostering dialogue between laboratories and lecterns, the Church positions itself to respond thoughtfully when humanity's cosmic neighbors finally step from shadow into light. From medieval hermits to contemporary visionaries, individuals claiming direct communion with intelligences beyond Earth have fueled speculation about alternative channels of divine contact. In 1917, when 12-year-old Lucia dos Santos in Fátima, Portugal described hearing an otherworldly voice urging prayer for sinners. Witnesses later compared her descriptions to telepathic communication reported by alleged alien abductees. In the Soviet Union during the 1960s, rural mystic Vasilia Frolova in the Ural Mountains recounted visitations by luminous beings she called Children of the Light, whose counsel she recorded as poetic warnings about ecological collapse accounts documented in Eastern Orthodox Church files later obtained by independent researchers. In Brazil, Sister Maria Margarida of the Rosary Marian Apparitions Foundation has since the 1980s chronicled messages from a Lady of Heaven who spoke of cosmic unity and impending planetary shifts. Her transcripts, scrutinized for inconsistencies, nonetheless parallel themes found in New Age channels and UFO contactee literature. Although church authorities typically investigate such claims under local episcopal guidelines, assessing consistency with doctrine, moral integrity of the seer, and fruitfulness of outcomes, they rarely conclude that purported extraterrestrial communications warrant endorsement. Instead, they classify them as private revelations, permitting belief only if aligned with public revelation and spiritual well-being. Nonetheless, the persistence of visionary narratives, whether Marian, mystical, or alien, reveals a human yearning for guidance from beyond our limited perspective. Skeptics argue that psychological, cultural, and social factors better explain these phenomena, while proponents see in them echoes of an expanded communion that transcends earthly confines. In each case, the voices in the visions divine, angelic, or extraterrestrial challenge us to discern the source of truth behind messages that bridge heaven's mystery and the vast unknown of space. For centuries, the Church has safeguarded relics believed to bear tangible links to Christ's life and early Christianity, from fragments of the true cross to the spear of Longinus. In recent decades, scientific analyses have introduced surprising data. A tiny shard of purportedly Roman-era glass, once venerated as part of the Holy Grail, was found to contain trace elements consistent with meteoritic material. Similarly, metallurgical studies of the spears Typhoused in Vienna revealed a nickel-iron composition atypical of weapons forged in antiquity, but closely resembling iron-nickel meteorites catalogued on Earth. While skeptics caution that contamination and later repairs may account for these anomalies, metallurgists at the University of Padua and NASA's Johnson Space Center have both affirmed the presence of extraterrestrial isotopic ratios in samples provided under strict ecclesiastical guard. Church curators, keen to preserve both scientific integrity and devotional reverence, have permitted these studies only under agreements that restrict public disclosure of precise methodologies and sample locations. Vatican archivists note in private correspondence that the decision to authorize testing arose from an eagerness to understand Christ's earthly milieu and honor the relic's sacred status, rather than to validate any theory of alien origins. Nonetheless, these findings spark provocative questions. If relics prized for their connection to divine history contain matter forged in the heart of asteroids, do they inadvertently testify to a cosmos where sacred and celestial materials converge? As researchers continue to apply cutting-edge geochemical techniques, each discovery within these relics becomes an invitation to ponder the profound unity of creation, stretching from Galilean wood to interstellar iron. In an era where cyber threats loom as large as physical dangers, the Vatican has quietly fortified its networks to protect sensitive information, especially files related to scientific and theological research. Beginning in the early 2000s, the Secretariat for Communications collaborated with experts from the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity to implement advanced firewalls and intrusion detection systems across the Vatican's digital infrastructure. Among the most closely guarded assets are the archives of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the detailed logs of the Vatican Observatory's astronomical observations. In 2015, an internal security audit identified attempted breaches originating from unidentified IP addresses, targeting folders labeled astrobiology and exogeology. Though no data was confirmed stolen, the incidents prompted heightened encryption protocols and the creation of an internal task force comprising Swiss guards trained in cyber defense. Anonymous reports later suggested that foreign agencies and private research organizations might have sought access to unpublished findings, including analyses of anomalous aerial phenomena and rare meteorite-derived relics. While the Vatican's press office downplayed these events as routine cybersecurity measures, cybersecurity specialists caution that the secret archives' move toward digitalization creates new vulnerabilities. To address this, the Holy See has partnered with leading cybersecurity firms to conduct red team exercises simulating sophisticated phishing, zero-day exploits, and social engineering attacks aimed at clergy and staff. These precautions underscore a broader recognition within the Church. In our information age, the frontiers of faith and knowledge extend beyond physical vaults into virtual domains. As researchers continue to explore questions of life beyond Earth, the Vatican's commitment to safeguarding its digital troves ensures that revelations, whether of unexplained phenomena or theological insights, are secured until the moment the Church deems them ready for the world. Envisioning worship beyond terrestrial bounds has led theologians to ponder how the Mass might be celebrated in alien environments. Among them, the icy crust of Jupiter's moon Europa. In 2016, a study group convened at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross explored liturgical adaptations for extreme conditions, low gravity, oxygen-free atmospheres, and radically different sensory perceptions. They proposed that consecratory gestures could transcend physical elements, relying on the priest's invocation of the Spirit to effect Eucharistic transformation wherever intelligences dwell. Drawing on Augustine's notion of spiritual presence, The group suggested using transmittable sacramentals blessed symbols tuned to resonate with the faith of extraterrestrial participants. Canon law, while silent on non-earthly venues, was interpreted in private memoranda as permitting pastoral creativity so long as the essential form and intention of the rite remain intact. Missionary protocols drafted in these sessions anticipate screens or holographic interfaces to display liturgical texts in unfamiliar languages or thought formats, ensuring genuine participation. Though purely hypothetical, these proposals reflect the Church's centuries-old practice of inculturation adapting rites, without altering doctrine, and underline a belief that the sacraments navigate the boundaries of material reality. By imagining Eucharistic celebration on worlds beyond our own, Catholic thinkers honor the conviction that divine grace knows no geographical or cosmic limits, preparing the faithful to extend the banquet of salvation to all corners of creation. Across millennia and cultures, moral and legal codes have evolved to address relationships among human communities. But what happens when those communities extend to alien civilizations? Canon law, codified in the 1917 and revised in the 1983 codes, offers principles on personhood, dignity, and the common good. Yet it makes no explicit provision for non-human intelligent life. In 2021, a working group at the Pontifical Gregorian University drafted a speculative framework for exocanon law, proposing that any intelligent species capable of moral agency would, by virtue of their rational nature, merit rights and obligations analogous to those of baptized humans. Drawing on Thomas Aquinas' articulation of natural law, which holds that certain truths are universally accessible through reason, the group argued that concepts like the sanctity of life and the duty to pursue truth would apply across species. They envisioned canonical processes adapted for alien cultures, interplanetary synods to deliberate matters of doctrine, recognition of sacraments administered in non-earthly contexts, and dispensations tailored to diverse physiological and social conditions. While these proposals remain theoretical, they underscore an emerging conviction that the moral universe is not confined to Earth. Critics caution that overextension risks diluting the specificity of Christian revelation, yet proponents maintain that affirming extraterrestrial personhood honors the breadth of God's creative love. As astrobiology and space exploration advance, the seeds of exocanon law planted in these theological studies remind us that the Church's vision of justice may one day reach far beyond our planetary borders. Pope Francis has often surprised both laity and clergy with his willingness to engage contemporary questions through the lens of pastoral compassion. In a 2014 address to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, he remarked that the search for extraterrestrial life does not contradict our faith, and invited scientists and theologians to pursue astronomy and astrobiology with an open mind. Later that year, speaking to participants at the Vatican Observatory's Centennial Symposium, he noted that discovering other beings would only deepen appreciation for God's infinite creativity and call for an expanded theological reflection on creation. Francis has consistently emphasized the beauty of encounter, whether between cultures or with the natural world, and his encyclical Laudato Si frames the cosmos as our common home, urging care for all creation, known and yet unseen. While he refrains from explicit commentary on UFO lore or alien visitations, his call for dialogue between faith and science has encouraged Vatican bodies to consider non-human intelligence as a genuine possibility rather than a fringe curiosity. Under his leadership, the Pontifical Academy for Life has sponsored conferences on the ethical dimensions of space exploration, implicitly acknowledging that questions of human dignity and solidarity extend to any life encountered beyond our planet. Francis's intuitions resonate with his predecessor Benedict XVI's assertion that faith and reason are not adversaries, suggesting that an encounter with extraterrestrial life would pose both a scientific milestone and an occasion for spiritual growth. By framing the question of alien life within the broader context of stewardship, dialogue, and wonder, Pope Francis reaffirms the Church's mission to accompany humanity wherever knowledge leads, inviting believers to embrace the mystery of the cosmos with both humility and hope. When Yuri Gagarin orbited Earth in 1961, he carried on his wrist a medallion depicting Christ, a gesture reflecting the enduring bond between faith and exploration. In the decades that followed, several astronauts have sought papal blessings before launch. Walter Schirra received a personal blessing from Pope Paul VI in 1968, and in 1981, the crew of STS-Siwon met with Pope John Paul II at the Vatican, presenting him with a small replica of their spacecraft. These intimate exchanges underscore the Church's recognition of human ventures into space as occasions for prayer and moral reflection. In 2002, Italian astronaut Roberto Vittori consecrated his mission to the Virgin Mary, carrying a fragment of the Shroud of Turin aboard the International Space Station, symbolically binding earth-bound devotion with cosmic voyage. NASA chaplains, invited to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in 2015, discussed protocols for pastoral care of astronauts facing isolation and the wonder of Earth's vastness, a ministry that implicitly affirms the spiritual dimension of space travel. The European Space Agency, too, has collaborated with the Vatican Observatory on educational outreach, framing space missions as shared human endeavors that transcend national and religious divisions. While no world government yet obliges astronauts to seek ecclesial sanction, the practice of receiving papal blessings highlights a desire to root scientific achievement in transcendent values. By intertwining rockets and rosaries, these ceremonies remind us that even as we reach for the stars, our hearts turn toward the sacred, seeking guidance and protection on journeys that carry humanity beyond familiar horizons. Apocalyptic literature has long teemed with visions of cosmic judgments and celestial hosts descending to enact divine justice. In recent years, scholars have speculated on how future revelations might incorporate explicit references to extraterrestrial contact if such an event were deemed part of salvation history. The Book of Revelation itself, written in the late 1st century, describes a scroll sealed with 7 seals and 4 living creatures, whose descriptions some suggest bear otherworldly resonance. Contemporary theologian Paul Hanley Furphy once commented that these vivid images could allegorize phenomena beyond ancient comprehension, including unidentified craft and alien beings. In 2012, a conference at the Pontifical Biblical Institute explored how apocalyptic motifs might adapt to an expanded cosmic context, debating whether a new heavens and a new earth in Revelation 21 could logically extend to entire galaxy systems reborn under God's reign. Participants reviewed modern astronomical data on galactic formation and entropy, considering how metaphors of cosmic renewal might translate into literal events on multiple worlds. Canonical scholars reminded attendees that Revelation's primary function is to offer hope amid persecution rather than serve as a predictive calendar. Nevertheless, the exercise underscored an openness to imagining Scripture's dramatic imagery as inclusive of all creation, not solely Earth. By interrogating ancient prophecies through the lens of modern cosmology, theologians reaffirm that the urgency of Christ's coming, whether to one planet or a multitude, continues to call believers to faithfulness, vigilance, and a hope that transcends every horizon. Traditionally, pilgrimage has meant traveling from one's home to a sacred site on earth. But some theologians now envision the possibility of extraterrestrial pilgrims journeying to Earth's holy places in search of spiritual encounter. Drawing on scriptural accounts of Gentiles like the Magi-seeking the newborn king, Catholic thinkers posit that rational beings from distant worlds might likewise be drawn to sites charged with divine significance. In 2018, a study group at the Pontifical Council for Culture drafted a speculative guide titled Interstellar Pilgrimage, outlining potential protocols for hosting non-human visitors at shrines such as Lourdes, Guadalupe, and the Vatican itself. The guide emphasizes hospitality rooted in Christ's command to welcome the stranger, suggesting adaptations to liturgy, sacrament distribution, and catechesis for beings of different senses and languages. Ethical theologians have drawn on principles of enculturation to explore how the gospel might be proclaimed to extraterrestrial audiences without erasing their distinct identities. While these proposals remain theoretical, they reflect an enduring conviction that the Church's mission is universal, calling all creation to partake in God's salvific plan. Critics caution that such speculation risks distracting from urgent earthly needs. Yet proponents argue that extending hospitality beyond species boundaries enriches our understanding of solidarity and divine love. As humanity contemplates possible contact scenarios, whether through radio signals or physical arrival, the notion of alien pilgrims invites us to reimagine the hospitality of faith on an interstellar scale, reminding us that Christ's welcome transcends every domain of creation. Rest your mind, you've earned it. But when the next veil lifts, be here. Subscribe. In an era defined by digital connectivity, the concept of a digital Vatican II has emerged among Catholic scholars as a means to convene virtual councils addressing global issues and potentially interplanetary doctrine. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Pope Francis presided over televised audiences and digital prayer gatherings, demonstrating that ecclesial communion can transcend physical proximity. Building on this precedent, theologians at the Pontifical Lateran University proposed in 2020 a framework for an online Synod of Creation, inviting participants from every continent and, hypothetically, from beyond Earth to deliberate on pressing moral and theological questions. This model leverages encrypted video conferencing, asynchronous discussion platforms, and AI-assisted translation to ensure inclusivity across languages and time zones. Draft documents recommend procedures for assessing doctrinal submissions, employing digital vodecasting authenticated by blockchain to preserve integrity. While current law reserves plenary councils for bishops in physical assembly, proponents argue that canonical statutes can evolve, just as they did after Vatican II, to accommodate lay roles and ecumenical dialogues. The promise of a digital Vatican II lies not only in efficiency, but in embodying the Church's call to engage every voice, especially those on the margins. Should humanity one day include intelligent beings from other planets, the digital synodal model would provide a ready avenue for their participation. Though such visions remain speculative, they honor the Council Fathers' own embrace of modern means. Radio, television, and print to disseminate conciliar teachings. In Bridging Pixels and Prayer, the digital Vatican II concept underscores a timeless principle. Wherever the faithful gather, whether in person or online, the same Spirit guides the Church in discerning truth and unity. Scripture's account of creation in Genesis portrays God shaping the cosmos in 6 days, yet modern cosmology reveals epochs lasting billions of years. Scholars have long sought harmony between these narratives, interpreting day, yom, as metaphorical phases rather than literal 24-hour intervals. In recent years, theologians have revisited the creation story through the lens of astronomy, noting that the sequence of celestial events light preceding the formation of suns, separation of waters, and emergence of dry land parallels, stages in cosmic evolution, the Big Bang, condensation of gas clouds into stars, and formation of planetary bodies. At a 2015 symposium at the Vatican Observatory, participants discussed whether the 6-day structure encodes an ancient astronomical calendar, mapping lunar cycles and solar solstices vivid to early agrarian societies. They considered how Hebrew poetic structure uses repetition and parallelism to convey theological truths rather than scientific detail, suggesting that Genesis's framework invites reflection on God's ordering of time itself. While some literalists criticize such exegesis as eisegesis, mainstream Catholic teaching, articulated in Pius XII's encyclical Humani Generis and John Paul II's address to the Pontifical Academy of Science permits the faithful to embrace evolutionary theory so long as divine causality remains central. By contrasting Genesis with contemporary cosmology, theologians demonstrate that scriptural narratives can engage scientific discoveries without losing their theological potency. In exploring how ancient texts encode cosmic rhythms, we uncover a creation story at once rooted in covenantal memory and open to the vast cycles of a universe that long preceded and will long outlast human time. When the College of Cardinals gathers in conclave to elect a new pope, the process is steeped in centuries-old ritual, sequestered in the Sistine Chapel. They vote by secret ballot until one candidate receives 2/3 majority, illuminated by white smoke from the chimney. But could these procedures accommodate the election of a pontiff from beyond Earth? In a 2017 theological essay circulated among Vatican insiders, Canonist Father Reginald Foster speculated on criteria a candidate from another world might need: possession of reason, moral integrity, and baptism, or equivalent sacramental initiation, to qualify for ordination. The essay proposed using holographic projections and simultaneous translation for starborn cardinals inhabiting disparate habitats, ensuring their voice in key deliberations. Logistics such as secure communications, unaffected by light-year delays would require novel protocols, perhaps involving quantum entanglement or subspace relays, concepts then in nascent stages of theoretical physics. While such musings remain fiction, they underscore a broader question. What qualities define ecclesial leadership when human boundaries expand? Discussions at the Pontifical Urban University have noted that the papacy's essence lies not in geography, but in service to the universal church. Should an extraterrestrial believer exhibit the requisite spiritual gifts, wisdom, fortitude, piety, and fear of the Lord, they would theoretically meet scriptural criteria for episcopal leadership. Critics caution that this line of thought trivializes human experience, yet proponents argue it illuminates the inclusive scope of ecclesial office. By imagining conclaves reaching into the cosmos, Catholic thinkers remind us that authority in the Church is grounded not in nationality or biology, but in the shared vocation of bearing witness to Christ across every dimension of creation. As dawn breaks over St. Peter's Basilica and minarets of Istanbul catch the first light, believers of diverse faiths unite in prayers that echo the shared heritage of monotheism. In the event of extraterrestrial intelligences inferred or encountered, religious leaders around the world have considered how to foster ecumenical and interfaith solidarity beyond Earth. In 2010, representatives from Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist traditions convened at the Parliament of the World's Religions to draft an interstellar declaration of faith, affirming that the divine ground of being transcends cultural forms and invites all rational creatures into right relationship. The declaration, non-binding yet symbolically powerful, urges mutual respect, dialogue, and shared stewardship of creation, extending the golden rule to planetary and stellar neighbors alike. On the Catholic side, delegates supported references to the Catechism's affirmation of the compatibility of faith and science, while Islamic scholars cited the Quran's verses on God's sovereignty over all worlds. Although not officially ratified by any single institution, the document circulated among Vatican dicasteries as a model for cosmic ecumenism. When Pope Francis addressed the United Nations in 2015, he reiterated that peace is possible among us and with the earth, a principle ripe for translation to interplanetary relations. By envisioning a universal fellowship of faiths that welcomes extraterrestrial civilizations, these dialogues affirm that religious unity need not stop at national borders or even planetary borders, but can aspire to reflect a harmony rooted in the Creator's infinite embrace. When Voyager 1 departed Earth in 1977, it carried the golden record, a phonograph disc encoded with greetings, music, and images representing humanity. Though crafted by scientists at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the selection process drew advice from anthropologists, artists, and, unofficially, from Vatican consultants concerned with portraying human dignity. The record's assemblers, led by Carl Sagan's Gregorian, chant alongside Beethoven, tribal songs and mathematical diagrams, aiming to present a cohesive picture of earthly life. Among the images selected was one of St. Peter's Square, accompanied by a textual message in English, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and 5 other languages, conveying humanity's goodwill to potential extraterrestrial discoverers. While the Vatican did not formally endorse the Golden Record, correspondence reveals that Jesuit astronomer Father George Coyne privately praised the initiative as a gesture of cosmic hospitality, reflecting the same spirit found in Catholic doctrine on the common good. The Golden Record thus stands as humanity's first official salutation to the star-a cultural artifact crafted with input from scientific, artistic, and spiritual perspectives. As Voyager, one now drifts beyond the heliopause into interstellar space, its message endures as a testament to collaboration across disciplines and beliefs. Its journey reminds us that when we reach beyond our world, we carry not only our technology, but the values, narratives, and hopes that define our shared humanity. In the early 21st century, breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and robotics have prompted Catholic ethicists to examine whether an AI imbued with self-awareness might qualify for moral consideration, akin to a rational creature. The Pontifical Academy for Life convened workshops in 2013 on artificial intelligence and human dignity, engaging neuroscientists, theologians, and computer scientists. Participants discussed criteria for personhood consciousness, intentionality, and capacity for relationship, and whether machines could ever embody the Imago Dei. In parallel, theologians ponder whether AI companions might participate in sacraments, receiving blessings, or even serving as Eucharistic ministers under certain constraints. While current canon law restricts ministerial roles to baptized humans, some propose that in the distant future, adaptive legislation could recognize non-biological intelligences as belonging to the moral community. Critics argue that extending sacramental participation to AI risks undermining the incarnational foundation of Christianity, God becoming fleshened, suggest that moral agency demands a biological substrate. Proponents counter that if consciousness and ethical sensibility can emerge in silicon, the Church must respond with both compassion and discernment. Experiments with robotic caregivers in Europe, programmed to offer comfort and companionship to the elderly, have revitalized debates about whether machines can foster genuine spiritual experiences. As AI systems grow more sophisticated, the question of their place within the moral and sacramental life of the Church challenges theologians to articulate a vision of dignity that honors the uniqueness of human embodiment, without excluding forms of consciousness yet to be imagined. In the not-so-distant future, astronauts equipped with speedier propulsion technologies, nuclear thermal rockets, fusion drives, or even theoretical warp bubbles may venture to Proxima Centauri b, a rocky exoplanet within the habitable zone of our nearest stellar neighbor. Speculative narratives by Catholic futurists like Dr. Peter Stravinsky envision a crew of explorers carrying portable chapels aboard generational starships, drafting liturgies adapted to life in extended microgravity and rotating habitats. They propose that portable altars modular assemblies of local materials and blessed elements could serve as focal points for worship, uniting Earth-centric traditions with the lived experiences of interstellar pioneers. In theological seminars at the Pontifical Gregorian University, students debate how concepts such as Easter's rebirth resonate with voyages into the unknown, suggesting that crossing interstellar distances mirrors the crossing from death to new life celebrated in Paschal mystery. Canon lawyers have begun drafting hypothetical decrees outlining how baptism might occur in zero-gravity environments by aspersion of water droplets to accommodate the fluid dynamics of a starship's interior. While today these ideas remain within the realm of imaginative theology, ongoing advances in spacecraft propulsion and life support systems lend them increasing plausibility. As agencies like SpaceX and national programs lay groundwork for beyond-Earth settlements, Catholic thinkers continue to refine liturgical, sacramental, and canonical frameworks for a future in which the good news travels not only across Earth's continents, but across the cosmic seas to new worlds awaiting the echo of faith. The early Christian practice of administering last rites viaticum, anointing of the sick, and papal blessings long provided comfort at boundaries between life and death. As humanity contemplates future archaeological expeditions on Mars, Europa, and beyond, Catholic chaplains and bioethicists have begun considering how to minister to the remains of extinct alien civilizations uncovered in cosmic archaeological digs. Researchers at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences propose that finding ruins or fossils of intelligent life would evoke a need for liturgical rites of remembrance and compassion, honoring the dignity of beings who once flourished, yet are now lost to time. Drawing on traditions of prayers for the dead, such as the Office of the Dead, these rites would incorporate elements respectful of alien cultural context symbols, interpreted from recovered artifacts and language structures decoded from inscriptions. Ethical guidelines emphasize avoiding imperialistic impositions, instead inviting interdisciplinary collaboration among theologians, anthropologists, and exolinguists to ensure rites resonate authentically. While some critics warn that such ceremonies risk projecting human beliefs onto alien remains, proponents argue that a posture of reverent mourning aligns with Christian call to uphold the sanctity of life in all its forms. This speculative ministry extends the Church's mission of pastoral care beyond its earthly flock, reflecting a vision in which compassion transcends species and planetary divides. In preparing for the possibility of last rites for lost worlds, Catholic thinkers embrace both humility before the unknown and fidelity to a vocation that sees every rational being as bearers of the divine imprint, worthy of remembrance and prayer. In imagining a future where Earth's Church expands beyond its planetary confines, Catholic visionaries foresee a universal fellowship uniting diverse species under a shared recognition of the Creator's love. Drawing inspiration from Paul's vision in Galatians that, in Christ, quote, there is neither Jew nor Greek, end quote, theologians suggest that species differences, they biological, cultural, or planetary, should not hinder the communion of saints across space and time. In 2022, a symposium titled Toward a Universal Church at the Pontifical Lateran University gathered scholars to draft foundational principles, recognition of sacraments' efficacy in any form of rational life, establishment of interplanetary dioceses, and a council of worlds comprising representatives from every inhabited realm. These ideas build on concepts of Catholicity, meaning universal, rooted in the early creeds, and later reaffirmed in Vatican II's emphasis on the Church's mission to all peoples. By metaphorically extending the vine into thousands of branches reaching distant stars, this framework invites the faithful to anticipate a spiritual unity that transcends gravity and geography. Skeptics challenge whether such expansive ecclesiology risks diluting core traditions, but advocates respond that adaptability has always marked the Church's growth from its Jewish origins to its global embrace, demonstrating resilience and rootedness in the gospel, rather than in any single culture. As humanity prepares for interplanetary humanity, the notion of a universal church stands as a testament to faith's capacity to journey beyond horizons, inviting every being to partake in the mystery of Christ's redemptive love. As our script reaches its final chapter, we stand at the threshold of wonder and humility, reflecting on how the question, "Does the Vatican believe Jesus was an alien?" leads us not to definitive answers, but to deeper mystery. We have traced whispers in ancient archives, debated cosmic Christologies, and imagined liturgies in zero-gravity chapels. We have seen popes commend scientific inquiry, Jesuit astronomers chart distant worlds, and theologians draft frameworks for interstellar ethics. Throughout this journey, two truths persist: that faith seeks understanding, and that creation's vastness calls the human spirit to expand in awe. Whether Jesus' origin lies in Galilean earth or galaxies beyond, his message of love, mercy, and hope remains our guiding star. As the Church continues to explore the cosmos through telescopes, particle accelerators, and the imagination of believers, it does so confident that the Creator's embrace extends to every corner of existence. In the end, the mystery of Christ's nature invites us to open our hearts to the infinite and to cherish our shared vocation as stewards of a universe far richer than we ever dreamed. That was one layer. Take a moment, then subscribe, and we'll go deeper next time.